topic this segment is about school safety and security updates, and our panel includes Ben Schwarm, Deputy Executive Director, Illinois Association of School Boards, Sara Boucek, Associate Director, Legal Counsel, Illinois Association of School Administrators, and Rick Johnston, Superintendent, Mahomet-Seymour Community Schools. And I know Ben's a returning panelist, so he was able to tell. He lived to tell, and he's back for more. And I know we have the big conference next month in Chicago, and this is sort of a preview to that. And Ben, when it comes to safety and security, it seems to be, I don't know if that's number one right now, but it's got to be close.
It is, and it's been growing. And I think what really started a couple of years ago, our legislature took a hard look at this, and they started a school security and standards task force that the governor put together. And I sat on that, and what we learned through that year of meetings and hearings was that the issue is big and growing among school board members, school administrators, and that there just really hasn't been a lot of opportunity for them to get more information, to find training. So that's what we're trying to do.
And how much do you hear, Sara, even from your school districts and administrators saying, hey, we need to do more, or we don't? I mean, people get into teaching because they want to work with kids. They aren't security experts. How much are you hearing from them that we need more input or education?
Well, there's a good balance, right? So we have to be able to balance keeping our kids safe and giving them an environment to be safe in. And so that's really where it comes in on the administration side. So what our administrators try to do is we try to focus on making sure that that safety is number one priority and letting our teachers do just what they do, is teach. So the impact of it really falls on the shoulders of those administrators and school boards to make sure it's safe. So mainly it's through making sure our facilities are up to date, that we have good, safe areas where our kids can go. We are post-Columbine, we're post-Sandy Hook, we're in that world where this is not something that can be looked the other way. Our facilities have to be top of the line, they have to be safe. And if I hear anything, it's that pressure, internal pressure on those administrators to say, have we thought of everything to make sure that our schools are the absolute safest place for not only our staff, but those kiddos and the parents that they serve.
Rick, tell our audience, for those who aren't familiar, Mahomet-Seymour, where is that based out of?
We are 8 miles west of downtown Champaign in central Illinois. And so as I listen to the two panelists here, it gets back to a practical matter from my seat. And I spent 15, 16 years in southern Illinois at Mount Carmel, and then the last 9 in central Illinois. And I think school safety, which is it has to be your number one priority to create an environment that kids can learn in. That conversation has been going on for years. But what's safe 20 years ago looks different now. And we're a product of the world we live in. And what's safe in one district is totally different than what's safe in another district. And so I think, to Ben's point, trying to find those common denominators across those lines to get to a base level, and then each district has to really answer those questions internally to what they feel like safe really means to them. And it's really up to the administrators to have strict guidelines, because we all sort of get lazy. I mean, I know at work we're not supposed to go out one door. We all go, oh, it's fine, I'll go out the door. Don't prop that door, and I do it. I prop that door. I mean, we all make our own little exceptions. Well, I can give you an example. In 2012, I began work at Mahomet-Seymour, and when we walked into district together, it was an open situation. Doors were unlocked. It was free in and out, whatever door you wanted to go in. And now there were no surveillance cameras per se, and so now we have over 100 surveillance cameras across the district. We've got buzzing systems at every building, key fobs that get us in and out of buildings, and so it's all monitored in a very secure situation. And quite frankly, when we went through that transition, some of the public had some angst there, because that was not supposed to be needed in a community like ours. But again, I think now that we've gone through that transition, our parents are very appreciative of that, and they understand that that's a product of the world we live in. So how do you balance it? Because you don't want kids thinking they're in a penitentiary. I mean, you don't want to be, buzzing into the cell just to begin your history lesson.
And I think that's one of the things of having Rick on this panel, and one of the things that I was most impressed with at Mahomet is they just built a new early childhood building for their pre-K and their kindergartners. And in all honesty, they have, and I'll let Rick talk to it, but they have a safe room environment that you would never know is a safe room. So, for instance, in between their K classrooms, their kindergarten classrooms, is where their cubbies, and it's decorated, and it's amazing. It's their artwork. It's their safe zone. But the moment a tornado comes through, the moment, if there, God forbid, started, there would be an active shooter or something would go through in that community, those kiddos will go into their safe space and not even know that they're in their safe spot. So I think that it is exactly that balance, but it's finding a way to make those kiddos, for a mom, I'm a mom, right, of a 9, a 7, and a 4-year-old. I want them to know, that they're safe, and in the worst situations, for them to be able to be calm in situations like what Mahomet did, and we really need to spend some time with and let him talk about what he did, because it was amazing, and it's safe, and it's the environment that you want your kids in, period.
And is there a way to do this, Ben, where it's not that jail type feel when kids are walking in?
I think it is, and that point comes up a lot. But they don't want it to look like a fortress or a prison, but you have to have the safety features. And again, now that what we've been looking at and what Sara talked about and what Rick did in his district, it's amazing what is going on out there, and it's all by design. And so you don't have the cars being able to pull up right next to the front door, right? You have that buffer. You have your landscaping so that you can see out and make sure that there's no one out there. You have your playgrounds enclosed somehow, so they're not out towards the street. And then inside, you have all these different kind of design effects that you can use that are really big on safety, but they don't necessarily make it look like, a prison or a fortress.
Rick, so let's hear, what did you guys do, and how much, we talked to Ittner a lot about how things should look and how they should feel.
Well, a lot of it goes back to design, but it's all built around the culture that you have in your buildings. And so as we look at the surveillance system, for instance, we look at trying to modify behavior in a high school. And so the bulk of our cameras on the interior of the high school. And yes, we want to protect the outside area of the building to intruders or whatever they may be, or people that shouldn't be in your area. But it's more centered around what's going on inside your building. Whereas when you look at an early childhood center, the cameras are more centered outward. And so, so each one of the aspects of your school safety protocol, and again tomorrow, we'll talk about communication. We've got a safety meeting tomorrow in our district with local responders. So as you start looking at each one of the components, you break that down by the culture in your daily walk and how it feels to your kids and feels to your students and your staff. And so what we did through design at the early childhood centers, instead of making the hallways the safe space, which 20 years ago that's what you did, but then when you look, we learned from data, and the data from Joplin said, maybe in the worst conditions, those hallways become a wind tunnel. And so what we looked at is trying to create those safe spaces as part of the cubbies, where the two classes are paired into one cubby, and that's repeated 10 times in our building for a kindergarten level. So we have 10 different small individual safe rooms that have tornado-rated doors on them that are steel, that are the highly rated fortresses that are concrete all the way around, and so they're very safe space. They're expensive to do, but you do that in lieu of creating the hallway as the safe space, and so it's just a shift in thinking and design.
What age do you talk to kids about active shooters and scary people and bad people? It's important that they know, but I don't want my kid coming home saying, boy, they scared the crap out of me at school today. I'm like, well, first of all, don't say crap, but is that something that there's data, or is it a feel, or how do you know?
Yeah, and I think as they go about this, you have to look at the different age groups. And I know, again, that's something that we talked about on the task force when we were working on that. We have to have drills in Illinois. You have your 3 fire drills. You have a tornado drill. You have a school bus drill. You have what they call a law enforcement drill, which would be your active shooter or whatever. And those drills just, by themselves are going to raise some, questions in the mind of younger students. And I think, though, that the staff and the teachers work very well to calm that fear, and I don't think it's a big problem. Of course, the opposite part of that spectrum is there are some schools, generally for older students, that actually have, live enactment shooter drills. Well, that obviously could really scare a younger student, so most of the time they don't do that. But it's kind of a judgment call within the administration and the teachers of that building. But certainly you have to look at the age group.
Well, I think that's even shifted too, and I think Ben would acknowledge that even in the last 3 or 4 years, how we respond to different age levels is very appropriate. Now, in the upper levels, we're trying to empower people to act. The days of securing yourself in a safe spot and waiting for the good guys in the white hats to be there is over. And I think, in this whole discussion, you can what-if school safety to death. I coached for 20 years, and whoever had the marker at the end of the discussion on an out-of-bounds play, that person won the discussion, Same thing with this. You can what if to death, but what we fall back on are the statistics. So if you look at weather-related incidents, you look at the statistics and win rates and FEMA recommendations and those kind of things. When you look at active shooters, you look at, the average active shooter in the last 4 years, that incident has ended within 4 to 5 minutes. And so that's shifted the way we do things. So we actually have an ALICE, it's called ALICE training. It came out of Ohio originally, alert, lockdown, inform, counter, or evacuate, not necessarily in all that order, that in central Illinois a lot of schools have done. The University of Illinois has gone to run, hide, fight. That protocol. It's based on the same kind of thing. So
for the teachers or for the students?
Everyone.
Or everybody.
Everyone.
Okay. So different ways to react,
yes,
depending on the situation.
And so what we're trying to teach is how would you react in a mall? How would you react in a movie theater? It's the same in a school situation. And then behind that, how do we communicate? How do we fill in the gaps? And how do we respond to that as a school district at the upper levels? At the lower levels, we might start out with a reading book 2 weeks ahead of that practice drill, talking about bad influences of bad people and how do we react. And so we make it age appropriate as we go through.
Is law enforcement present now at all public schools? Is that
we don't have a school resource officer, but we've got a very close working relationship with our local police in the small town, rural setting, and we feel very confident of that. We don't feel like we need that yet, but there are districts near to us, the similar situation that's important to them, and so it's by district, and it's the feel and the culture that you have.
It does, and it really varies on how they handle that. But the first thing you have to do as a school district, though, is work with your local responders, work with your police department, your fire department, in making up your plans and setting up your drills. And that, again, something that Rick touched on, that he's connected to his local law enforcement. So that's key to be able to set up that plan. But our state is so diverse. You can't have one plan that everybody has to do. Again, a suburban district in Chicago, with tens of thousands of students in it is much different than a small rural district in southern Illinois, who may only have a part-time police officer or a volunteer fire department. Totally different way to do that. So it really varies on how you do it. But we're finding a lot of the school districts north are using school resource officers in the building. One, because they have them, and they have the funds to do them. It's very expensive to put a school resource officer in your district. And because
that's not, you can't just pluck a police officer from your local police station. They've got to be paid by the school district, correct?
Sometimes they are. Sometimes they're paid by the local police. Sometimes it's a combination of the two. It's really however they put that together locally.
I don't know that it's resistance, but how much do you have to push and guide teachers, or is it like anything else? Some are really curious and asking questions. Others like, another thing I got to deal with.
Well, here's our target. Our target is if we can make an environment in our culture so that our teachers know that when we have an incident, their children in other buildings in our district are safe, then we feel like we've hit the mark. And so if we can tell our public, which is our parents, that, hey, our own teachers believe this, and then the teachers sell it, whatever it is, school initiative, parents will listen to that fourth grade teacher. Parents will listen to their homeroom teacher much more than even the superintendent. And so if you can do a good job as an administrator, making sure that your staff feels empowered and they have the tools, like we just adopted an phone app on a crisis situation, the Crisis Go, in fact, and so we're implementing that now. So it's just one more tool that helps our teachers feel more secure in that communication piece.
And from the legal standpoint, what I tell administrators when they call is the 3 Ps. You have to be proactive, you have to plan, and you have to practice. You're not going to be able to always know, what's going to happen. You don't know what's kind of come flying at you. You don't know the day there's going to be a tornado. You don't know if there's going to be a major fire. You don't know those things. But if you are proactive and you plan and you practice, that is the best you can do from the legal standpoint to get ready for something if it were to occur.
And this is terrible, but as a kid, my memory of the fire drill, I loved it because we got out of class. I mean, it was exciting. I'm just saying, so it's not necessarily something that's going to scare kids. You're getting up, you're moving.
Well,
it's
it's worked, too, because there hasn't been a death in a fire in a school in Illinois since in the 50s. So it's worked. So now we've got to take that same attitude and shift into some of these other areas.
Yeah. And to that point, there's been a lot of talk. Most of the talk focuses on, a lot of what we've talked here focuses on violence, active shooter. But in reality, the school district is much more likely to have an incident of a fire or a flood or a hazmat instance,
yes,
or a bullying instance, fight with the kids, or maybe even disturbance when divorced parents come to pick up a kid, something like that. Way more common than an active shooter, as horrible as those circumstances obviously are. So that's why you have to be prepared for all of them.
Well, and again, those are the kind of things that superintendents lay up at night worrying about. I mean, when you talk about school safety, it's safety on a bus. I mean, when you got a bus that's 20 miles, not 20 maybe, but 5 miles away from your school center, they're at risk. And so those are the kind of things that keep you up at night.
And I know in the local news business, anytime there's a school bus, even if it's a fender bender, everybody reacts, but also parents at home want to know. It is something that grabs your attention because you see that school bus, you're like, you hope everybody's safe.
And now social media plays such a part of what's going on. You've got to be able to communicate at the appropriate level with all the groups that you need to communicate with. And so trying to reach those people at different levels of social media has been a big challenge, too, recently.
And I don't think anyone really realizes how much goes into that planning. For instance, we had a superintendent, Dan Cox, who was at Jasper County. He's now at Staunton. But when he was at Jasper County, I went to visit his school, and he has the largest square miles of a district in the state of Illinois. And he had a pretty significant bus accident due to ice. And when I went to visit him and I heard the buzz in the back, I was like, what is that, Dan? And he's like, that's the bus transportation. That's the bus language. That's the CBs. We are listening constantly. So he's like, for instance, when we had that bus accident, I was one of the first on the scene as the superintendent because not only do I know where those buses are heading, but I'm hearing everything that's going on. I don't think the public understands how much goes into making sure that our kiddos are safe and how many of our administrators and our teachers are constantly tuned in and making sure that all of that we've been proactive, we have planned, we have practiced. So when it is time, they're on the ground and they're there.
So when we talk funding, is it the superintendent who decides the percentages? Like, what, we need to put this into safety training. We need to change our locks. We need to buy cameras. Is that a big the funding?
Funding.
You gotta,
all right, funding. Let's talk about funding.
Yeah. Well, we're in Springfield, right? We should talk
that's
funding.
Right. That's right. Well, what that's forced us to do as school leaders is try to look at the different buckets of dollars that you have. So whether it's the bucket of tort dollars, which is liability and tied to your risk management plan that we'll even talk about tomorrow in our safety committee, if it's the one we're fortunate enough to have the 1% countywide sales tax for facilities. So we have an additional bucket that many school districts don't. And so you're trying to take your fading existing operational funds and trying to keep the tax rate level like we have done for 20 years in Mahomet-Seymour, and you're trying to work off of a model that you're just trying to be flexible enough to be able to pull it out of the rabbit out of the hat, if you can, to get where you need to go.
We were very sensitive to this on the task force as well, because there's a lot of good ideas that come up. There's a lot of things that you can do to make your buildings and your schools safer, but they all cost money. So we were very cognizant of the fact that we can't be putting unfunded mandates on these schools. They'd love to do this if they could, and if they had the money. But just to say, hey, you have to do all these things, and then not pay for it was just an untenable position for the school district. So what we did is we have best practices, we have recommendations, and it goes all the way down to the locks on your door and where you keep your security keys, as far as the recommendations for a safety plan. But they are recommended; they're not required because of the funding side.
Great discussion, guys. We will continue, and we'll wrap it up. Actually, Dennis Young, the president and CEO at Ittner, will talk a lot, too, about that classroom design and maybe the redesign from when we were all kids. That classroom starting to look a lot different. It's Issues in Education live today from Springfield at the Old State Capitol.